Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of the Level Up Podcast, where you learn how to go from agent to entrepreneur. We have a phenomenal guest with us today. Jeff Quintin is here, and we're going to talk about old school versus new school strategies, the best of each, the ideal blend of both, what the old school can learn from the new school, and vice versa. So we got a bunch of stuff to get into. As always, Greg Harrelson, how are you today?
I'm doing good, and as always, I'm always excited to hang out and speak to our guests. But in this particular case, I don't look at our guest being a guest. I look at we're having a conversation amongst great friends that have a long relationship, many years of relationships of hanging out, grinding together, doing big business together. So this is going to be a treat for me, and hopefully the audience gets something also.
Yeah, I know that they will. Jeff Quintin, officially welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for having me, and we really appreciate it. Likewise, Greg, this will be a great conversation, and I think we can share a lot because of all what we've learned over the years. So
yeah, and whatever Jeff says, just remember, I'm right. And he's wrong.
You know what I did is I just stole it from you anyway. So we stole it from somebody.
We've traded ideas for many years, my friend.
Yeah,
that's for
right.
damn sure.
For sure.
Well, Jeff, for anyone that's been hiding under a rock that doesn't know who you are, fill them in just on the basics: who you are, where you are, what you do.
Sure. So it's Jeff Quintin. I'm with Keller Williams, the Quintin Group. Live and work in Ocean City, New Jersey. Been in the real estate business since 1992. And, ultimately service southern New Jersey markets and have expanded into the Philadelphia region as well, and continue to expand in the East Coast and then eventually throughout the country.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So so you've made a big change in recent years. So you've been, I guess, what a lot of people would consider an old school prospector for a long time. In fact, the previous headset you had on in the lead up to this to this recording literally has a different, like, there's two different mouthpieces for your headset, if that gives anybody an indication of where you're coming from. So you guys have been part of kind of the Mike Ferry system for a long time. I mean, that, Jeff, that's kind of that's really your bread and butter. That's what your team was based on for a lot of years, was you hitting the phones, you hitting the listings.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's always what the base has been, the foundation of our business, and still continues to be prospecting based with some marketing enhancing and like you said, like the headset I have now, it's kind of a custom headset where actually we have two phones on our desk. We can dial from a right phone to left phone and have a microphone on each left and right, and then obviously earpiece as well. So before, this is all phone dialing and so forth before auto dialers and Mojo. We were our own Mojo. We were able to actually dial three lines because we had a left phone, a right phone, and then a cell phone, which would be sitting in the middle. So, and then ultimately we would even bring in somebody, and Greg and I used to do this many years ago. We have what we call a hammer. We'd have somebody come in and sit, and we just dial lines, dial a bunch of phone numbers, and then hang up on them. If they answered, circle next to them, make a dot, and give you a piece of paper and say, here's the last 10 people I just talked to that answered and hung up on it. They're already home. So we'd have an auto dialer person in the background of what was called a hammer. So yeah, we're kind of old school.
That is, I've never heard that before, and that is hilarious. You literally had like a minimum wage employee just sitting there dialing, going, and then click, and then hang up, and then give you a list of people who now they know are home.
That's right.
Of course.
We still do it.
Of course you
did.
In
fact, we still do it. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There was a time I didn't have an employee did it. I had my daughter doing it, right?
Yeah.
And one time I remember getting being questioned by her mother. And that is, I remember my daughter telling her mom, yeah, Dad's got me prank calling people. And I'm like, oh God, this is going in the wrong direction. But, for the context of this conversation, just listening to you, Jeff, I mean, brings back so many memories, right? We're sitting there and let's define like what old school is. I'll share a few things and maybe you can add to it and, some additional things. But like when I think of old school, I think of, waking up in the morning and going to the gym and, calling Jeff at 6:00 in the morning as I'm walking into the gym and us doing affirmations and making commitments on what our goals are going to be for that day. And then saying, okay, we're going to connect again at 11. So, old school is what I recall is like, talking to an accountability partner at 6 in the morning, going into the gym, getting home, getting into the office early, role playing, getting on the phones from 8 to 11, dialing or double dialing like what he's referring to, and even triple dialing before the technology existed to triple dial through the computers. And then at 11 o'clock, all we did was call each other up and say, hey, this is what we did. And if he didn't do what he committed to, I'd probably, write him a little bit or make him send me a check and vice versa. And then that was it for our conversations for the day. And then we'd go do lead follow-up, go do some presentations, and we'd go home. And like literally that was the routine. That is what I see as old school. It was extremely boring.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Anything you can add to that, Jeff? Like, what am I missing?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it is, and I think still today that's still a good foundation of anybody in that as far as that morning routine, and then the accountability side. I think that still exists. But yeah, it became one of the things you and I have always that is old school and yet also new school is becoming a master at repetitious boredom. We always hear that phrase, at least we do, where you got to master that no matter what it is, whatever skill you're in. I mean, whether you're if you're Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, whatever it is, the best of the best. I mean, we how many free throws did we see Mike Jordan throw? We don't know, but do you know he's been absolutely bored of that and probably sitting in the gym on the court with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and that's what we did. We just did that every single day. So, but I think that's still old school. Yes, that is, but yet still applies. So I think there's some old school stuff that still applies, or maybe some old school stuff that doesn't still apply. I think there's some new school stuff that we need to mix and pepper in between the two. But there's some really good foundations between that, which I think, from what I think you and I experienced, the new school isn't doing that stuff as much as it used to be. It doesn't seem as much.
So what are they doing? Let's talk about that. Let's set the stage for the new school, and what are they doing? Because I've got a team of agents that I work with, obviously, in my offices and expanding outside of my local market, and they're constantly bringing all these ideas and tempted to do these things. I try to keep them as old school as I can. But what are some of those things that we would say are the new schools of doing business? What are the new agents doing if they're not like getting on the phone grinding from 8 to 11? What are they doing?
Well, I think that there's several different things that the new school is doing. There's one thing I'm watching right now that the new school is not doing that seems to be resisting a lot of. And getting back to what you just said earlier was when we bring in the word accountability. We were so in the beginning of our careers, and still to this day. I mean, if you were the one to come on our team today, one of the things we talk about is two things we look for: someone who wants structure, someone who seeks accountability. But it seems like new school today is so lack of the structure and so lack of accountability. Like they're just free flowing and hey, it's going to happen this way, and I'm not held to the accountability style or as much. So I think new school, I'm seeing that a little bit, and yet we also understand that the new school, if you look at overall, the number of the average production per agent per year is going down. It's not like it's going up. Whereas it seemed like old school had much higher production than what new school does. That's just a couple of thoughts there with regards to accountability. I think, the difference between when we see new school and old school activities, for example, it depends on the channel which we're working with. Before, if it was old school, was over the phone prospecting, or you had, I guess you had 4 different things. You had number one, you had, speaking to people over the phone. 2, you had meeting people face to face. Thirdly, you had the option to go ahead and mail a postcard to somebody to communicate that channel. And then 4th, you had the ability to do some marketing of advertising to the masses, like radio advertising or television, something where it's, big to the masses. New school today, I think those channels have changed a little bit. Certainly you still have all those, but now you have, certain things as far as social media and email and web presence and so forth. And before, I think, the old school was about the amount of exposure you can get. I think the new school is more about how to create better relationships that you can get into. I think there's a little difference there and a little shift I'm seeing. That's just a couple of my thoughts in the beginning. What I'm seeing.
One thing I say as you're talking, you talk about OTP, over the phone prospecting. That's when, one of the things about old school is there was a lot of outbound lead generation being done by the rainmaker.
Right.
Okay. Because some people will hear this and say, well, there's still outbound, generation going on. I just hired a company to do it for me. So I'm saying old school there was a lot of outbound lead generation being done by the rainmaker. The new school seems to be everyone's focusing on inbound lead generation. Like they're either buying the leads from Zillow or doing the social media, advertising to generate leads. It's like one of the things that I see between old school and new school. And there is no definition between old school and new school. We're making all this up right here based on our experiences. But one of the things that I would say that is a distinction between the two is new school is focused on how can I get inbound leads. In the old school, we were like thinking, how can I get more leads by outbound efforts versus, we weren't thinking inbound efforts at that time. So, I am not here to say, and nor do I believe that going after only outbound is the right way, but I also believe that only going after inbound is the wrong way. In other words, I do think that there's possibly a blend to the two that ultimately, when figured out, will become, as you mentioned one time, Jeff, earlier, maybe not on this broadcast, pre-conversation, it'll lead to more profitability. It'll lead to higher revenue and more profitability. It's probably a blend of two. But that is just one thing that I think is so obvious. New agents are coming into the business, or agents that have been in a little bit, been for a while. They're always looking for what is the next inbound lead system I can actually purchase. Where before we would have blinders, and if somebody came to us, years ago with an inbound lead thing for us to purchase, we'd be like, we would scrutinize, we'd ask so many questions, and then we would come to the conclusion that if I just spent 15 more minutes on the phone dialing expireds, I could make more money than dealing with all this new systems. Now, I don't believe it's still there. That's the answer today, but that would be the old school mentality.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that what's a challenge right now with inbound lead generation is the predictability and if it's duplicatable, and if it is, at what level and how much cost is it? I think that's the key. What we learned in the old school was we knew that we could make 30 contacts a day or 50 contacts a day, and when we said a certain script or said a certain question or did this over a certain period of time, that for every 30 contacts that you and I would make, we could set a listing appointment, and therefore we would know that if we said this and talked to these many people, that within a week we could set 10 appointments, and we knew that for our skills and our script going out on those appointments, we could convert 70-80%. We could get, whatever it was, 7 listings, let's say, for that week or whatever it was. But that was what was old school, is we knew the predictability because it was predictable as far as the number of outbound. You could control it. The number of inbound right now seems to be in the old new school is very it's not as predictable, if you will, unless you, I don't know. It seems interesting. You certainly have the ability to do it, but it doesn't seem as tangible.
Well,
I agree.
The lead time is longer.
Yeah, the lead time is longer, and so I got a thought that I want to bring up on some facts, and but let me comment to what you just said. Lead time is longer. Well, if you're capturing a lead 3 years before they do a transaction, should we even be calling it a lead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure.
It's not a lead. Yep. So no, the lead time is not getting longer. It's just we're loosening up on our definition of what we define as a lead is. We're getting a little bit looser on what we will declare a lead. We call things that are being captured leads. All we're doing is those are just names.
Yeah, so they're not even prospects. They're suspects.
They're suspects at best. The other thing is the challenge that I see with the inbound lead, phenomenon that exists is that we got to remember there's only about 5 million sales in in the United States, give or take, maybe 1 million or 500,000. But and probably just 6 or 7 years ago, if you look, or let's say 8 years ago, if you look at all the lead generating companies, there was probably 15 million leads generated,
right,
for approximately 5 million sales in the U.S. Now there's hundreds of millions of leads being generated, and there's still only $5 million sales.
Yep.
So see, like the people that when we're focusing too much on inbound lead generation, just the fact that the leads that are being sold to us are increasing at such a rapid rate, the volume of leads, but the number of sales is not actually increasing at nearly the rate. So that means these are not new leads. These are just leads being sold to so many different people. And and as Matt, you say, we're catching them, we're getting the leads earlier. They're not even leads, they're just names.
Yeah.
So at the end, you're paying a service to provide names where you can get the names and telephone numbers for free. That's what we did in the old school.
Mm-hmm.
You're just generating a list.
Yeah.
For the most part. Okay.
Yeah, list of respondents maybe.
Yes.
At best. Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about the kind of the new school approach, because I think one of the things that probably, just knowing what I know about you, Greg, the thing that probably bothers you the most is when people, regardless of whether it's old school, new school, what the excuse or what the approach is, the thing that bothers you the most is not doing what's best for the business, but doing the things that come easier and then attempting to get out of the things that are hard by paying other folks to do it.
Yes, that does. So I think even if we were to peel that onion another layer deeper, I really what kind of like bothers me is that I feel like there's not a good. A lot of agents don't have good work ethic.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, and so that's really the underlying thing. Is like I love to find somebody that's got real good work ethic. And good work ethic to me doesn't mean you have to grind for 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day or 8 hours a day. Like you could tell me, hey, I work hard from 8 to 11, and then the rest of the day I do whatever I want to do. And if somebody says that and tells me that they grinded for 8 to 11 and they did something to self-generate in their business, then I'm going to say, hey, I'm proud of that person. I'm looking at that person as great. Go do whatever you want to do with all these new school things. Where I get, a little bit concerned, and it's more of a concern for people, is we're getting away from having that type of work ethic and going to immediately the easy solution and delegating it away. And most of the new school agents have not experienced a shift in the market. So the conversation that I'm having right now to the new people that are, or people that have been in the business for the last 8 years, they're looking at me like, Greg's missing it. He's so out of date. But that's because they haven't experienced a shift. So they don't really know right now how they're going to survive in a different economy. And so my passion and what you said bothers me. It's not that it bothers me because I'm judging them. It's because I'm worried for them.
Yeah. No, I fully believe that. I mean, and Jeff, I'll throw a scenario out to you real quick and just see what your guys' reaction to this is. So let's say somebody came in, they're young, they're hungry, they're early 20s, right? And they come to you and they go, look, here's my plan. I want to get into real estate. I'm not a big fan of the phone, but I'm not afraid of it. So here's what I'm going to do. From 7 to 10 o'clock every morning, I'm going to be on Facebook and LinkedIn, making connections, messaging people, working my database, working my sphere and I'm going to track everything that I do with the intention of generating 5 to 10 actual phone conversations that take place later in the day or the next day. And I'm going to track all my numbers. And here's my work ethic. Here's the schedule that I'm going to adhere to. I want you to hold me accountable to it. Like if they took old school work ethic and applied a little bit of the new school tactics, but within a framework of really good work ethic, what would you say in response to that agent?
Well, okay. So one is I would say, okay, I understand. I think that's great that's an option that agent wants to do that, and I think it's good because I think that is some of the new school way. And yet, what I also would want to ask is that agent that's 20-some years old, what their future is and how long they want to be in the business for, because without a doubt, the old school of knowing what to say and how to say and getting in conversation with somebody's not going away. So at some point, the conversations in which he's going to have with his 5 or 10 people, that agent must be really good to convert because there's got to be a conversation. That's not going away. relationship or the conversation of objection handling and learning how to convert. So I would say to that person that, okay, sure, you're going to be behind the scenes on the on the computer, and that's probably going to limit them the number of transactions they're going to do over a period of time, because number one, the number of contacts they're going to make, and number two, the quality of the conversations that they're going to end up having, because they're not actually out there talking to people at the level and high that they need to. That would be a concern there. Second concern, or at least second concern I see right now is that same agent coming in is, okay, I want to get in real estate, I'm going to do this, and then 2 years down the road when they're doing 25 deals, which isn't bad, they don't want to start it. They want to start a team. Then they say, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go hire 2 buyer's agents and another agent, and I'm going to go get this person. Now they've got 4 people on their team, which they're now coaching them the same way, in the same aspect of not prospecting or having any type of conversation. 2 years later, they're just the team's not going anywhere, and the agents on the team aren't making any money, and then ultimately the team leader, let's say the rainmaker who started it, has to now start to go purchase leads to feed the other agents, not teaching them anything because they never had the foundation of communicating of the prospecting base. So I would say that certainly the new school of that is good, but I just got to get back to that the conversation still needs to be made, and the skills of learning how to say and what to say.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and 5 or 10 reps versus 30 to 50 reps a day. I mean, absolutely, that's going to show up in performance and conversion. 100% agree.
I've got something that Jeff just said. I had to write down, and I would say this conversation doesn't just go for real estate agents. I think this goes for leadership of those that are leading agents, whether it be owners, brokers, team leaders, whatever you may want to call whatever position of leadership you are. Old school used to teach their agents. New school is just feeding their agents. Now, there's a lot of leadership that's not really feeding them, but what I mean is so even the leadership, instead of digging deep and figuring out how they can teach people and coach people to build wonderful businesses, they're skipping that process and just throwing more leads at them, keeping them satisfied. So I think the leadership is also part of the problem, is instead of teaching people how to fish, they're actually just feeding them fish. And again, that's fine right now until the market shifts. And I'm not sitting here talking about the shifts going to occur tomorrow or even next year. I don't know when it's going to occur, but we do know a shift will occur at some point before we retire. Another thing that I think might be fun here, and I want to play this game with Jeff, is let's build for a minute. Let's build. If Jeff, me and you real quickly, if we got a new agent, because I think we both believe that the next top agent is going to be the one that blends old school and new school. So what are the old school strategies that we would want somebody that we're coaching, or somebody in our company that we're coaching, that we would want them to use, and what are some of the new school strategies that we would want them to implement? And maybe we can show people where we are from a mental standpoint on how we would combine the two. Sure. So let's just kind of build that out. So, what is one of the first things that you can think of old school that somebody needs to adopt?
Well, no, I think it's a great little exercise. What we talk about on our team before I get into it is being what we call humology, part human and part technology, because old school is human, right? Without much technology, today is technology, but you got to be you got to be bought in and part of both. So starting out, one is what we would on the old school side is you'd have to really learn the scripts. You have to learn what to say.
I wish you could see my notepad. If you can see it,
it's one.
The first one I wrote down a minute ago.
Learn scripts.
So look at that. I told you that we could finish each other's sentences, didn't I, Matt? Yeah, the first one is the same on my notepad that I just wrote down. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's cool. I mean, ultimately learn scripts and ultimately learn it in such a way that you become learning like script certified, which I believe we have that part of our team. Like, you got to be really, really good and looking at it as this is your business and this is a skill, and you've got to get that. So number one is learning the scripts. Number two Old school is you must set aside and have a schedule. Like agents today don't even have a schedule. So one is they have to develop a schedule that's going to be in alignment to what their goal is. If their goal is to sell 10 homes a year, their schedule is not going to be much. It's going to be they can do pretty much whatever they want whenever they want. If they want to sell 30 homes a year, well, then they've got to make sure that a portion of their day, the 20% of their activities will generate 80% of the results. That 20%, if they're working, a 10-hour day, they got to make sure at least 2 hours or 3 hours are going to be in lead generation in their schedule, and it has to be done first. So that would be number two is a schedule. Old school number three, while they're learning the scripts, they also got to learn the inventory. Like they got to go out and learn the marketplace. I think if you know what to say and you put the time into prospecting each day and you know the inventory, become a market expert in the marketplace, you're an expert all the way around. And you can do that. And a new agent right there can go from 0 to 30 transactions in a year if they put 3 hours in a day, make a certain amount of contacts, they get really good at what they're saying, and they have knowledge in the marketplace. Those are the three things I think on the side, starting off with, I think that someone needs to do.
Yeah.
On the old school.
Yeah, I'm going to add. You pretty much took my list. I'm going to add. I put learn the scripts and prospect 3 hours a day. And while you're prospecting, build your database.
Yes.
Okay. So you're prospecting for now business and you're prospecting for future business. That's one of the main reasons why you're prospecting. So learn your scripts, 3 hours of prospecting. I love that you added learn the market because I think that's critical. Script mastery is within learning the scripts. I agree. I would add accountability. We touched on that. Go back to getting an accountability partner and hold each other accountable. And there's a difference in an accountability partner and a mastermind group. Two totally different things. An accountability partner is there for you to make promises and commitments to, and then you work your butt off to fulfill those promises and commitments to. And in the event that you fail, then there are some sort of consequences. That's what we mean by old school accountability. And then that works in reverse with your partner. What I would add from the new school side, okay, now that you've learned your scripts, now that you're prospecting and you're generating your database, then the new school side is, and even though email drips is not necessarily that new, but when we're talking about old school, we're talking 15 years ago. There wasn't email drips at that point. So on the new school side, because you've built a large database that you self-generated, then you're going to start using the CRMs and the technology to drip on people. Right? And then you're going to be sending them a video or 2 videos via a newsletter, every single month. But then every 90 days, see that drip, everyone's going to say, oh, yes, I do that. All the new school people are going to say, yes, I do that. The thing that a lot of the new school are not doing with the drips is they're not monitoring who's clicking on the emails, who's watching the videos, and they're not using that as a trigger to make a phone call. That would be right. The old school. The old school is the phone call. We would look at the new school and say, okay, the new school has a great idea. They figured out an efficient way through email marketing or some sort of system to communicate through technology. We would love that as old school. But what the old school would immediately say is, okay, but when they click on something, I'm going to call them. And if they don't click on something, I'm going to call them anyways, but I'm going to call them on a 90-day rotation. In other words, I'm going to call my database every 90 days, which is once a quarter. And if I see that they're opening or clicking on any of the emails and videos that I'm sending, that's new school, but I'm going to use that click to trigger an additional call instead of waiting for the 90 days. That would be an example of how I would see blending it. Or work in your centers of influence. That's an old school and a new school strategy. But old school, all we did was call them every 90 days. New school, all they're doing is emailing them and never calling them. So the blend is, how about email them twice a month, maybe mail them once a quarter, call them, old school, once a quarter, put them in your CRM and have market reports dripped onto them once a month. That's new school. So it's a blend between the new school and the old school that I think ultimately wins in the end. I don't think old school is going to win as a standalone, and I don't think new school is going to win as a standalone. But those are things that I would be adding to the list on the new school side.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that
Automation and the artificial intelligence side is the new school to take advantage of that can accelerate an agent's productivity quicker than we could in the old school.
absolutely, and
But
and
yeah,
and
but it has to drive a phone call.
it still requires a contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still requires a contact at the end. So whether it's inbound or outbound, it's still a contact. What about profitability, Jeff? We were talking about profitability a little bit, and I know that that's high on our list, is to make sure that, we want the top end numbers like revenue and gross revenue and GCI, and we love all the number of transactions to be high, but I think you and I really love profitability even more than that. What do you think the challenges are with the new agents, the new school way of thinking and profitability, and how can they become more profitable?
Well, I think the new school isn't as focused on it as much. I think the shiny objects out there, and I think the GCI number and the volume and the recognition there is more prevalent than going back to what is your bottom line net number, and on the second page of your tax return, that's really what matters. What are you going to take home? And really look at that. So one is, I think the new school's not focused on that, where I think you and I and a lot of the old school agents are always going back to profitability no matter what we're doing, and we're always looking at, okay, what's our return on time, with everything there as well. Um, you know, Without a doubt, the old school agent without any of the new school will and has been, if you look at it right now, much greater and profitable than that fully new school agent not blending the old school in. New school agent right now is someone who is buying the business most times, waiting for inbound leads to come in, versus the difference between buying and going out and getting. They're more passively driven versus actively driven, and waiting for it. So there's two options: waiting for it, less productive, or excuse me, less profitable, or more active and higher profitable. Both I think can be accomplished each way. I think there's a little bit of nice finesse in businesses now with the technology, but it becomes a little bit more expensive. So I think there's a balance there right now. What I'm watching, I think that also in the new school, there's also ways that you can be new school, very efficient. For example, through social media, because of the masses out there and the eyeballs there. For example, with Facebook marketing and things like that, and the reach, what you can spend for $20 a day and get to 30,000 people, versus before, to send a message to 30,000 people on the radio would cost you $30,000 or whatever the number, ultimately. So, profitability is something that I think you and I and a lot of the business owners and team leaders, are most focused on from the old school mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the record, listen, I definitely subscribe to some new school inbound lead generation strategies. I am by no means stuck in just the old school ways. I do believe that new school is important, some of the new school strategies. And I was just thinking about, say, Zillow, for instance. People are out there buying Zillow leads, right? And Zillow leads are very expensive. Whether you like them or not doesn't really matter. They are very expensive. You know, so when I'm approaching something like Zillow, the way that I'm thinking, this is my old school mindset. I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to be that profitable on a Zillow lead. It's just by the time I get it and work out arrangements with the buyer's agents and whatnot, it's not going to be the most profitable. So I have to be thinking, I'm not going to do it unless it's profitable. So why would I do it? I would do it only if I have systems in place to capitalize on the second deal that you'll do with that lead. So if I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get that lead in and I'm going to pay money and I'm not going to make much profit on it. I mean, I know we can make something off of it, but you're not going to make that much profit on it. The profit's going to come when I set up the proper structures to follow up with them after the transaction to get referrals and do a second deal in the same 6 to 12 months from that lead. And then now when I've got two deals attributed to the cost of that one lead or the cost of leads for that system. Now all of a sudden I can be more profitable, but it requires me to be thinking about profit and then saying, well, if I'm going to do it, it's got to be profitable. That forces me to set up the systems, and a lot of times that means we've got to be calling these people over and over again using scripts to get them to refer to us. So I just want to throw that out, that all of the new school systems out there are likely to be profitable, but you have to think one or two more levels deep beyond it's just getting a lead and making a sale. You've got to have the structures in place to capitalize and do multiple transactions off of those leads.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also in the new school, some of the things that we're seeing that's really working is, when you talk about email automation, email itself, I mean, was new, and yet now it's becoming a little bit more old school, right? Unless you start to implement some video inside, video is hot, right? And doing it in such way. So what used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, emails and all that, more and more people are not opening their emails. Next thing I think that right now is hot is texting, right? So having automated text and texting, campaigns and so forth, and set up that way. So I think the technology there, I mean, right now more people, what it used to be was, people would prefer a phone call. That's what it was, old school. That's just because that was the only way to really get in touch with somebody. We didn't have email, didn't have texting, right? So today, most people don't even want a phone call. They'd rather be texted. So, it's a blend of both right now. However, it seems like there's a wave of people still now. All of a sudden, it seems like people do want a phone call. Are you getting that feeling too? They want to get back into pick up the phone and call me kind of relationship.
Yeah,
I'm seeing it.
The way that where my mind is on that conversation is there was this run towards, oh my gosh, this texting is so efficient, and we thought that texting and social media would be a way that we could stay connected to more of our friends. And then what I think that's phase one. It was like, oh my gosh, this is efficient, and I can see people and connect with them that I haven't connected with in years since I graduated high school. I see them on Facebook. I kind of know what they're up to. And then phase two, I think we went to, wait, I'm a fool. That just because we're connected through technology doesn't mean we're connecting.
Right.
There's a difference between being connected and us connecting. And I think we're now realizing that, even on Facebook, it says, how many friends do you have? Like the whole language that we were using. Now we're in the stage of it doesn't really matter how many friends you have, but we were in the phase where like how many friends you had actually said something about you. Now,
right.
If you actually mention how many friends you have, that says something about you, and it's probably not what you want to be said about you. So we went through phase two where we started realizing that, no, we're connected, but we're not connecting. And so then what we do, what to me that means we now started realizing that we're actually disconnected. Because texting is actually texting your child in the house is efficient, but it's a form of disconnecting. It's not connecting. And now all of a sudden when we started to realize that we're disconnected, then I think our minds instinctively started to now want intimate connection again. It's like I thought this was great, but when we started fantasizing about this is connecting, and then we came to the realization that we're actually disconnecting, then it wasn't until then that we started to see the value of intimate connection. And now I see people wanting to have conversations again.
Yep.
Matt, you probably love that conversation and love to have conversations about that all day long, because I know how your mind works, at least at some level.
I do. Yeah, this is a fun conversation to be a part of and eavesdrop in on a little bit. Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to the profitability is a really interesting conversation, right? Because it's all related. It ties into the conversations and things like that, and how much we can scale up. Because I think that it's going to be interesting to see, because I haven't been through the shift in the same way that you've been through it, Greg, and in terms of coming out, building a successful business on one side that comes out successful on the other side, and a lot of my friends haven't either. So I look at the industry, and I'm coming at it from valuing the old school because I'm an old soul. And so I never discount the past, and I, for the most part, assume the people that are older are smarter than the people that are coming in now. You know what I'm saying? So I have an interesting kind of combination view of it, but it's going to be. I think there's some people I feel like that are doing it at a high level. I think one of the things that might shift is exactly what you talked about, Greg, which is, can you handle not making a major profit on the first deal?
Yeah.
Because that change, like if you look at software and you look at online marketing, anything where tech has gotten there faster, the people that win are the people that can afford to not make a profit on the first deal.
Yes.
That hasn't really hit real estate yet, because all of us are making a living, and that next deal is part of the profit that we take home and pay the bills with.
Well, let's make sure we're clear. Most people are not making a living.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, but I guess maybe our audience.
They're taking it home in the form of income. But you know what I mean. They don't have they cannot afford to not pay themselves and put that money back into the next deal. They have to. It has to pay. It has to go to bills to keep the lights on.
I think it's a very important point that you're making, and is that you can make enough, like you said, you can make a living off of the first deal. But if you're really wanting to create wealth and build something and buy properties and have money to invest, or buy a boat or whatever you want, you've got to be the profitability conversation has to come in. And so to me, buying some of these leads is almost, it's a loss leader for me. It's like it's the cost of the acquisition cost of a new client has went up in the area of inbound lead generation. And so in order to continue to play that game, you have got to increase the revenue generated per lead. And you're not going to be able to generate more revenue per lead unless you're generating multiple deals with that lead. I mean, because if the lead comes in, it's a $400,000 sale, you weren't the cause of that $400,000 sale. That buyer's parameters caused that to be the $400,000. So you couldn't do much to change that, right? Okay. But the way you take that $400,000 sale and make it $800,000 revenue is by doing a different deal. Now you've got $800,000 worth of revenue off of the same lead cost. Now all of a sudden those things become profitable. But you have to really be clear that that's the game, and what does your structure need to be set up like in order to pull that off. I don't see a lot of people pulling that off. The other thing is I think that the industry, Jeff kind of mentioned it, it's like there's so many shiny objects, but one of the things that the industry has done, or whether it's technology companies, I don't know who to blame and don't care to blame anybody, is they've been very good at reprogramming agents' minds to believe that a 10% ROI on our lead source is actually okay. So where like if Jeff, like if I was going to bring an idea to you 15 years ago, and I said, hey, you give me $1, I'll give you back $1.10, what would you have said to me?
I'd say that was terrible. I would never even look at it.
Yeah, you may not take my call again. Yeah. You would have expected, I would imagine, what do you think you would have expected if I said spend $1 with me, and what kind of return would have turned you on back then?
I mean, what we used to look at was 10 times. That used to be it. Like if I was going to spend $1,000, I was going to spend 10 grand, I want $100,000 return. I would want 10 times. Today, I'm not sure you can get that anywhere, but I mean, it just depends. But I mean, that minimum standard.
Well, you can get that in calling expires if you're script certified.
Yeah, but that doesn't cost you anything other than your time.
That's right. See, we can still find those returns.
Sure.
And so there's part of the conversation is those returns still exist, but so few people that are coming into the business are going for those returns because they're accepting, if I, $100 off of 1,000.
Yep.
They're accepting a 10% return when there's still 50%, 100%, and more returns available out there in the industry right now. Again,
Yeah,
I think it's a blend.
what's crazy is also is, and you can see this. Speaking of buying leads, let's talk, and we'll just real quick in regards to the new school thought. So many companies are sending leads to agents for referral fees, and agents are willing to pay 35, 40% for referral fees. And so, which is interesting, because they're willing to pay 35, 40% referral fees, but when they want to come on a team and a team's only going to offer them 50% split, they're actually going to make less if they're on a company split, paying a 40% referral fee at the end of the day, right? But we're seeing agents right now willing to take less and less on paying referral fees out because it's an easy. Here's the lead. It's given to them. Here's the lead. The new school is, I don't really. It's just I'm waiting for so much to come to me, and at the end of the day, what we find is these guys are going broke. They're not making any money.
If anybody in this audience wants to know how to drive your lead costs down, it's blend. You got to have a blend of leads coming in. You got to have low cost or no cost leads coming in. That's old school outbound prospecting. And then if you want to use some of the new school strategies and buy some leads, and the leads, I'm just going to say they're $30 a lead, whatever that is, and you get 100 of them, that would be $3,000. Well, then you need to generate another 100 at no cost just through your efforts. So now you have 200 at a $3,000 cost. You just drove your lead cost down and your profitability up.
And I think also one thing that the conversation we're having on our team now is, okay, if we know that we can generate a number of outbound leads a day, and we hold ourselves accountable to the number of outbound leads a day, and we're trying to get into the new school, what are we going to hold ourselves accountable to the number of new school inbound leads per day? And so what is that actual number that we know that we need to hit? Like, instead of being one day we get 3 or one day we get 10, what is that actual number? And if you could get the number to be the same with very low cost, you can double, triple your production. So one of the games that we're playing is, how do we generate 100 seller inbound leads per day? And you can do this through technology. You can do it through a lot of the home value widgets, or what you and I do is a lot of voice broadcasting and certain ways to drive it where it's low cost. But one thing that we do have, which we worked on from a foundation from the old school, you hit on this earlier, was we built a database. Without the database, cannot drive inbound leads. Well, you can, but your cost is going to be so much greater. If you have a database you've already actually communicated to, and be able to go back out in such a way and communicate to them with some type of message that's going to have them call you, that is most profitable, I find.
Yeah, I agree.
Love it.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Holy cow. Yeah, I took a lot of notes. Okay, so definitely some very cool core beliefs to take out of this. We don't have time to recap everything like I would like to, but there was a ton of incredible stuff that came out of this conversation that I hope people take away from it and really absorb the core beliefs that you guys both have. The work ethic, script mastery, knowledge of the market, and I would throw in there proactive versus reactive lead generation. Those are 4 or 5 core beliefs that you guys both share that I love, and anybody can take away from this conversation. So before we sign off, Jeff, how do people connect with you guys and remind us again of the location so they can keep you in mind for referrals since you're in a tourist city?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So Jersey Shore, Southern New Jersey Shore is where I live and work, and we expand into the Philadelphia region. So if you have anybody coming this way or looking to buy, sell, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, that's us. You can reach me, on Facebook Messenger at Jeff Quintin. That's always good. Email me, Jeff at the Quintin Group as well, and we'll always respond back to you there as well.
Very cool. And then Greg, same question for you.
Just message me on Facebook. Facebook Messengers become one of my best friends and best ways and most efficient way to communicate. So just reach out to me there, and we'll go from there.
Cool. And then for the podcast, make sure to subscribe. You can go to iTunes, Stitcher, depending on whether you want the audio version. All the video versions are available on YouTube, or you can go straight to theleveluppodcast.com. And then if you leave us a rating and review on a place like iTunes, which we would really appreciate, make sure that you call out guys like Jeff who are sharing their time. They're volunteering their time, setting aside away from running their business, generating leads, generating profit to share what they're doing with all the rest of us. So let them know publicly how much you appreciate and appreciate them. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much. We'll see everybody on the next episode of the Level Up Podcast.